Hello and welcome to my channel. My name's Peter Abraham. I'm a second career registered nurse focused in the areas of advanced illnesses, typically those that would qualify for either palliative care or hospice care. Those are two separate services. I'm also a certified end-of-life doula through the International Doula Life Movement, an avid writer having published well over 500 articles, mainly on compassioncrossing.info, an avid book author and published 21 books for hospice nurses, 22 books for caregivers, 4 books for holistic nurses, and 6 books for my fellow end-of-life doulas. If you're new to this channel, welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to visit. In this channel, we talk about issues related to death and dying. After all, we are all going to die. Wouldn't it be better if we understood how that works and be better prepared for it? In my experience as both a hospice and palliative care nurse, as well as an end-of-life doula, those individuals, as well as caregivers and family members who are aware of what happens naturally at the end of life, tend to have a better death than the uninformed. If these are topics of interest to you, please consider subscribing below, hitting the bell notification. I try to publish videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Sometimes there'll be a little bit more, sometimes maybe one less, sometimes an occasional gardening or house project update video. The topic for today's video is going to be for my fellow hospice nurses, although other end-of-life professionals, families, and caregivers may also benefit from the topic that we're going to discuss, because it is a critical nature, something that has been happening nationwide in hospice, and that's the pressure to admit patients who are not necessarily eligible. And before we go into the topic for today's video, I want to ask you, what are you grateful for? What are you grateful for? I believe that in life, we face many tragedies. Life is not a bowl of Cheerios or roses or whatever terminology you want to use. Bad stuff happens. And I'm a strong believer that as much as we like to say, I'm a good person here, this is a good person there, we're not. Only God is good. And I'm not saying that to preach. But that doesn't mean bad things shouldn't happen, or should happen, I should say. I should say bad things should not happen, but it does. And I believe that if we're resilient, if you focus on building resilient, you're less likely to be torn asunder. I believe there are 3 pillars to resilience. We deal with the 3rd pillar, what are you grateful for, on this channel as a side note, so to speak. It's not a main topic, at least for this video. What are you grateful for? You can comment below. This is a non-judgmental channel, or think of it to yourself. For me, what am I grateful for? I'm grateful for my fellow end-of-life doulas. I'm grateful for Amber, who, when I shared with her that I'm working on a presentation for breast cancer awareness and prevention, because this is October and that's the month. And I've been practicing like crazy. I think I was up to like 32 slides. My short-term memory is like this. And Amber goes, "Do you know about thermography?" I didn't. So I started digging, and it was like, wow. I'm the geek, so this stuff excites me. Thermography can detect breast cancer 5 to 10 years earlier or more compared to mammography, and could detect other illnesses as well. FDA-approved machinery, but it's shied away from. It's actually buried by the FDA because it's not approved by them. America, and I'm going to go on a small rabbit trail, just giving you a warning, follows the sick care model. We let you get sick, then we give you some temptation, like there might be a cure down the road. Donate here, walk there, do this and do that. And here's some pills to take and some chemo and other things to do. And it's the sick care model. And I'm not making up these words, sick care model. You can go and research, be like me, curious. What's this all about? But there are a growing number of agencies that are pushing against the sick care model. I'm not saying I agree with every one that I'm gonna mention here, but for example, CenterWell Health, their senior care, and they're in Kentucky and Indiana, and I live in Kentucky. But they take the value care model where they're trying to do preventive care. You know, I took a break from hospice. I worked in a very short-staffed nursing home during COVID, and the CDC was literally telling nursing homes that the primary method for detecting COVID in our geriatric patients was fever checks. And for any of you who visited loved ones in the hospital, and especially in assisted living, skilled nursing, you probably remember going in and having your temperature taken. That is beyond unscientific for geriatrics, because geriatric patients, they either don't get a fever, or when they do, they're at the tail end. They're either going to die, or they're going to kick it. They're going to recover, or they're going to die. So thankfully, my director of nursing did this with the CDC and said some choice words. We're going to use evidence-based science, which is we're going to take the temperature, but we're going to be listening to lung sounds. We're going to be looking at the pulse ox for greater than 5% or greater drop. We're going to be looking at delirium, personality changes. We're going to be doing assessments 3 times a day. If somebody just, our nursing instinct tells us this person might have COVID, we are going to isolate, we're going to treat, we're going to detect and treat early. So when we took that route, close to 100% recovery, surprise. So I'm grateful for places like CenterWell Health, or there's an organization when I was researching thermography, Patient Choice up in Lexington does thermography. It's not paid for by insurance because, again, insurance is the sick care model. Insurance doesn't pay for end-of-life doulas. Our entire healthcare system needs a reboot. But I'm grateful for places like um, CenterWell for Patient Choice. I'm grateful for Amber letting me know about thermography. I'm grateful for Cynthia, who published, I shouldn't say published, she pointed out several articles on aromatherapy for grief and anxiety. So I'm the Greek Geeky Nerd. So on November 3rd on compassioncrossing.info, I have I didn't do the word count yet. I think it's over 3,000 word article. I'm not saying that because more words is good, because more and more of my articles are actually under 1,000. But I wanted to do a deep dive on aromatherapy for anxiety, for grief, for fatigue, for pain, for restlessness, for sleep deprivation, both for before end of life and at end of life. So I'm grateful for Cynthia just giving me that, giving me the incentive by saying, here, look at all this that's available. And then I'm doing a deep dive. And then one more last thank you. Julie and a number of other end-of-life doulas were publishing articles this past weekend on RAIN, which is a methodology for managing anxiety and grief. That's going to be the focus. So I have an article on that publishing on compassioncrossing.info on October 27th. So I'm grateful. So getting in the topic for today's video, again, this is predominantly for hospice nurses, but it will apply to other interested parties. I participate in a number of end-of-life groups on LinkedIn and Facebook. I find that the Facebook ones are more active than LinkedIn in terms of discussions. And so in the predominant hospice nursing Facebook group, a person, and a lot of these they post anonymously, and I do understand the whys, because their manager may be looking on. Who's asking these questions? They're posting this. And they posted a dilemma that is very common to all of us working in the field of hospice and in end of life to begin with. They said, I have a patient who has senile degeneration of the brain. So I'm going to be giving some terminology and then doing a back pedal to explain what that means for those who don't work in hospice. So dementia is an umbrella term. Just like if somebody says, I have cancer, that's an umbrella term. Well, which cancer? Yeah, is it breast cancer, lung cancer, kidney cancer, brain cancer, glioblastoma? What cancer? It's an umbrella term. Well, dementia is an umbrella term. There's Alzheimer's dementia that's the absolute most common. 60 to 80% of loved ones who have dementia have Alzheimer's disease. Vascular dementia is in the top 5. Frontotemporal dementia is in the top 5. Mixed dementia, which is 2 or more dementias, are in the top 5. Well, when it comes to hospice, Medicare, no matter who's paying, doesn't matter who's paying for hospice. The Center for Medicaid Services, CMS, governs all hospice agencies in the US. They make the rules. And in their rules, when somebody comes on hospice, number one, first and foremost, there has to be a prognosis of 6 months or less. And I'll try to remember to put a link in the video. I have a video out how the hospice calendar is not like the traditional calendar. So you and I have a calendar system. Hey, Peter, let's go out to eat this day or that day, or we got church on a Sunday, and we say we're going to do this, and today's today, and then as we get closer, we're closer, and then we're there. And unless we call and say, hey, it's changed, and we move things around, it doesn't move. We can pen or pencil it in, take your pick. There's fiscal calendars. And again, that's a fixed calendar system, traditional calendar, fixed calendar system, fiscal calendar, fixed calendar system. The hospice calendar, when we say prognosis is 6 months or less, that doesn't mean they have to die in 6 months or less. It means that if everything goes according to the normal disease trajectory, they most likely will die in that time. And CMS has a system called recertification where if they have not passed away, if hospice can document that they've declined sufficiently enough that they can prove that they will the next time around. And this could go on for years. It's not traditional calendar. So getting back to dementia, Medicare is very persnickety, for lack of better words, for what primary diagnosis. You have a prognosis, which is how much longer. The person has to have a terminal prognosis. They have to be in a terminal state. A terminal state means they could die at any point in time. So we talk about state. A lot of people know that there's solids, liquid, gases, okay, the 3 states of matter. When it comes to a terminal state, it just means that they could die any second. They may not die in the next couple months, but I've had cases where it was like, whoa, what happened? I didn't see this coming. They could die at any moment. So that's 2. The third thing is that they require a primary terminal diagnosis. Now, a diagnosis is a condition, not a symptom. A diagnosis is a condition. A prognosis, how much longer? So there has to be a primary terminal diagnosis. Alzheimer's is a primary terminal diagnosis. Vascular dementia isn't. I don't understand. They'll say it has to be a specific type of dementia. Well, how much more specific can you get? I don't make the rules. So one of the bucket categories, again, an umbrella category, is senile degeneration of the brain. It's not Alzheimer's, and it's not a number of other specific ones that they allow. Let's say it could be vascular, but they don't allow vascular, so we're going to say senile degeneration of the brain. So a hospice nurse was putting out that they have a patient who has senile degeneration of the brain. The daughter's the primary caregiver. This is home patient. And the daughter keeps on taking her to different appointments. The patient has a Foley, and the patient empties her own Foley bag. Now, my fellow hospice nurses, I hope the gears are going. I hope the gears are going. The daughter's taking her to the primary care physician on various appointments, getting blood work done. The patient has a Foley, and the patient empties out her whole Foley and reconnects everything okay. Does that sound like where on the FAST scale? Or does that sound like on the FAST scale if they're that functional that they have the eye-to-hand coordination and the wherewithal to properly empty their Foley and reconnect everything? Think about that. So this person, I shouldn't say he because I don't know if it's he or she, was an anonymous post. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. So just so you're aware, and I do my best to be as transparent as possible, I shared number one, this needs to be discussed in IDG because the little that was shared, this person should never have been admitted. Not admit. And by the way, the anonymous poster came back and said, and this is why this topic's being talked about today, their agency said, admit them. You admit them. Focus on what she can't do. That's what's happening nationwide. Several other people chimed in that that's their situation too. This is hard. I was there too. I'm going to tell you to do what I did, and I'm going to tell you the repercussions of what happens. So you could do informed consent. And at the end of the day, you do you. I'm not judging you. You are you. I am me. You're going to do your thing. You have to live with yourself at the end of the day, and I can't tell you how to do that. I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to say my nursing license, because what's happening is Medicare fraud. Medicare fraud. If they come in and they do an audit and they see who's nurse, what nurse admitted, what nurse keeps on saying that this is okay, it's your license on the line. I refused. In this book, I talk about this issue on page 20 through 22. This is one of the cases I had. I was not the admitting nurse. The admitting nurse, now this was an Alzheimer's patient. And to me, this is a greater offense. A greater offense. Alzheimer's patient. The admitting nurse put down that the patient was FAST 7A. FAST, the functional assessment staging tool. They put on 7A. 7A means that number one, all the previous stages are complete. They're 6D, they're incontinent of their bladder. 6D, they're incontinent bladder. 6E, they're incontinent bowel. 7A, in a 24-hour period of time, they say 6 words or less. And when they say 6 words or less, articulated, intelligible, in the context of everything else that's going on. Not just they're saying 6 words and they're all spread out all over the place. No, in context of a conversation. In best case, they're functional words like pass me the salt, or I need a spoon, or I need a fork, and you chain together meaningful words. They said 7A. And I get there, and before I go in, I'm reading the notes from the admitting nurse. And remember when I mentioned that your wheel should be changing, the patient changes their own Foley. This person didn't have a Foley, but it had in on the the CNA care plan, companionship only. The CNA was only there for companionship. I get there, and again, I have this in the book. I get there, the patient herself is answering the doorbell. The patient herself is ambulating without any assistive devices. The patient herself said, come with me, and was talking to me using complete sentences. We're talking dozens of words as we walked back to the kitchen table, and she sat herself, and the husband was there. The patient herself was able to explain that she was on 2 different antibiotics for RSV and I think it was pneumonia. She had 2 different, RSV and UTI. So she was able to explain all that. And I'm like looking at the husband. And then I ended up walking them through the FAST scale. I'm looking at her, letting the husband answer the questions. She was an FAST 4. And when I got back to the office, I said, we need to discharge. They said, well, no, Peter, maybe she was having a great day. I said, no, I'm sorry. I walked the husband He said he wanted somebody so that he can go and run grocery shopping and do other things. She takes care of herself. She does her own gardening. I said, I'm calling compliance. And after I call compliance, I'm calling in Medicare fraud. What do you want me to do? Because the right thing to do is discharge her because she should never have been admitted. They said, Peter, I'll call compliance. I said, okay, I'm going to be following. They ended up calling compliance. Compliance looked in it. They ended up saying, okay, we need to do a slow discharge. We're not going to bill for any of the services to Medicare, but we need to do an educational discharge over the course of 2 weeks. And yes, I got verbally chastised. Why you? Well, number one, you made me the case manager. My nursing license is worth more. I am not going to be committing Medicare fraud. And then that was not just that agency. I've had other agencies too, where I would go in and I'd call, and I still remember a Sarah Care we're dealing with Dr. Barr. I'd go in, and the family was, we need hospice. And I'm like doing my full set. They are not 6 months or less. Well, Peter, how nurses can't prognose? Yes, we can. Yes, we can. I teach on how to prognose. Yes, we can. I would call, and then my manager would be going, well, when we send in the other nurses, they admit because we tell them to admit. I'm not anyone's lapdog. I'm being very blunt. I am not a lapdog. When we went to nursing school, we're told that to use we're there to learn critical thinking. We're there to engage our brains, engage in critical thinking. We're not only there to protect ourselves and our own nursing license, we're there to protect the license of the doctors that we're under. Do we want to endanger the doctor's license because we're like everybody's going along with it? Please, please don't. Again, at the end of the day, you might say, I need this job desperately. I was having a Facebook message today who was asking, you know, if I go in to become an end of life doula and I do this RN concierge thing that I'm doing with Compassion Crossing LLC, will I be able to make a living at it? But I'd have to be able to make a living like right now, like go in and wham, I'm getting the equivalent of my paycheck. And I can't emphasize this enough. Number one, there is lots of room for more people in this field. So number one, there's lots of room. Just speaking for Madison County, Kentucky, Madison County, Kentucky is a population of 100,000 people. There could be 999 more end-of-life doulas in Madison County, and we'd still have room for more. You hearing me? There could be a total of 1,000 end-of-life doulas in Madison County, population of 100,000, and there'd still be room for more. Please let that sink in. Because when I get to point number two, I don't want you to think that Peter's trying to shy away people. I'm not. But there is the reality check. The reality check, and I will be getting back to the topic. This is a rabbit trail, I know. The reality check is this is a long journey. Casey, who runs I think it's called the Death School or the Doula Death School. Apologize, Casey, if I'm pronouncing it wrong. She's also a former nurse running concierge or end of life doula. You know, she recently shared that it took her 3 years to get to a steady income. 3 years. So I shared with this person, you know, if you're looking for something that's going to be instantaneous money, this isn't it. I'm grateful that I'm able to do this. I'm able to do this because there's book sales. My wife is getting Social Security. I'm looking at, do I collect early? I'm 62. I don't know if I'll do 63, 64, 65. She works part-time. And then there's the investment income. If you saw one of my earlier videos in terms of dividends, and there's been adjustments since then. I just haven't done an updated video because I am doing better on the investments than what was originally posted. So I have wiggle room. I don't have health insurance. Um, But that's not a complaint. It's just a choice in terms of being able to afford other things at the moment, and I'm grateful that I'm healthy. But if you're in a position where if you stood your ground and you lost your job, there are hospice agencies that do things right. There are hospice agencies that are desperate for good people. And I don't mean good in the way of good and evil, but they're desperate for people who do things ethically, morally, legally correctly. Not admit. I shared with this person, I said, number one, this needs an immediate IDG discussion for discharge. She's not appropriate. Number two, the family, I'd actually team up with the social worker and go in and educate the family that while you're allowed to go to doctor visits, you're incurring costs that hospice will not cover. And I think it's called the ABN form that would need to get filled out so that they're fully aware. And I'd also have a goals of care discussion because if the daughter says she's going to live for years, again, that would be grounds, got a discharge. Goals of care mismatch. Maybe this person needs palliative care, not hospice care. Now, last item, we're coming down to the close of this video. I do thank you and appreciate your time. I did mention, this book. I mentioned this book. This goes over how to learn how to do a fairly accurate prognosis. And key factor, at least for me, they have to be in a terminal state. Somebody comes up to you in a supermarket and you're reasonably sure they're not terminal. This is not like fortune cookies. It's not a fortune cookie thing. It's using real life evidence-based science plus art. It is an art form. But the longer that you do this, you get to a reasonable degree of accuracy that you could be prognosing, should be, especially if you're an admission nurse, because part of the story for when you're doing that SBAR call for the doctor, you should be able to say, my prognosis is to the doctor. And it might be at the very beginning, you might be just 6 months sounds okay. Um, but you should have enough. If you're hospice for any length of time, you should have enough to know when they're greater than 6 months. At least if they're a year or more, I would hope. I would hope. Could be wrong. I am far from perfect. I've shared on previous videos. I am broken in so many different ways. But another book out there for those of you, or especially if you're dealing with senile degeneration of the brain or any loved ones with dementia, this is part of my holistic book series. It's how to stage any type of dementia. And where I will end is that the FAST scale, while it was developed for Alzheimer's disease, can be used. Oh, I forgot one more book. Sorry. Can be used for every type of dementia out there as long as you're consistently applying it. So what that would look like for the example, the patient who is changing her own Foley is, I don't know if she has the Foley for urine retention, which would be my nursing instinct. But let's say that we don't know her continence status at all. I might say she's FAST 4 or 5, or pick 6A through whatever. And she has a Foley for urine retention for which she changes her own. She's able to empty the bag, change the bag, and so on. And then I go over it from that perspective. I also have this book here. If you are one admitting a lot of patients with different types of dementia, and just going over, this is page 10. So stuff that you're looking at. And for any of you watching, I want to be very clear. I'm not the type of nurse who wants people kicked off of hospice. I want everyone who is eligible for hospice. I'd rather be the nurse who, let's say that we think they might be 9 months. I'd rather get them at 9 and fight to keep them on than to have somebody who has years to live come on to increase the census numbers so people have a paycheck, and then they get discharged for failure to decline from audits or other reasons. And then they're coming back. There's just so much problems. But this book goes over how do you really know when they can be admitted, and how to keep them on board once you have them at that state. So just going over some of the table of contents here. And so I do thank you for your time. I do, if you're one of those hospice nurses, you're being pressured to admit that you really feel it's inappropriate, you still have to do you, but keep in mind you can call in the compliance office anonymously, call into Medicare anonymously. Um, depending on your census, it may not be too much work, but I've worked for agencies where we're all drowning in too many patients in too few hours of the day, and they're still pushing for inappropriate admissions. It's like I don't want to contribute not only to losing my license, but then burnout and burning out others, because we're like, I want to be there for people who are really terminal. That's my heart. So I shared my story a little bit. I shared what I hope to be valuable information to you. Please feel free to comment, share your thoughts. Thank you. Take care. God bless and bye.